Alright guys, we're still out here at the gathering, and so what we're going to do now is the hand drill, and Travis Henry is going to walk us through the steps that he does, and also the material, and a few tips and tricks for everybody. And I think he's going to walk us through it, and then it's going to just kind of be open for everybody to try, you know, if they want to, and go from there. So, take it away, Travis.
Alright, today I brought yucca for a spindle. Also brought some mullein. These are my two favorite, at least, in Kansas. I've never really tried a lot of different other spindles, especially when you get into trees and things like that. I've never really delved into that too much. Just because, like yucca here works so great. It's got a slightly pithy core. Anyway, when I go to selecting one, obviously I want one that's dry and one as straight as you can get it. And you just want to look down it. Like this one here, you can see has a little bit of a crook in it. And you can still work with a piece that has a little bit of a crook in it. This is the one, you can see how much straighter this one here is. That I had selected yesterday and started working on. But once you get your piece and you think it's straight enough for you, I just go through and take off any of the hard nubs. You don't want anything protruding, otherwise you're going to abrade your hands way too early. You're going to end up getting blisters fairly fast. So I'll just go ahead and take the knife and knock those high ridges off. After I do that, then I'll go through and scrape down the piece with the back side of my knife. That's why I've got a nice spine on it. And that just knocks off any extra burrs that are on the piece. You just go through there until you can kind of run your hand down it and you're not really feeling anything protruding. It may feel a little rough, obviously, because you've just scraped it down. When you're done with that, a lot of people just stop at that point. But the next thing that I do is I just grab another piece of wood that I just found laying around. Doesn't really have to be anything special. And just kind of burnish the piece. This smooths off any extra rough pieces. And will lay down any of the fibers that are sticking out. And I'll pass this around so maybe you guys can kind of see and feel an idea of what I'm showing here, I guess. That'll really slick this up. That way will help prevent any blisters. I'm just going to rough this spot back up so people can feel the difference from the top to the bottom here. But anyway, go ahead and pass that around so you can kind of feel what it feels like on your hands. Obviously you can feel the knobs up the top. For a piece of mullein, it's really no different. The task is exactly the same. I like my spindles to be almost exactly this size right here for me. It's just below the thumb. It's not as wide as my thumb. Probably more my middle finger-ish, or my pointy finger, sorry. And for height, I like it to be where I'm sitting, my arms can be straight out if they want to be. When you get down here too low, your legs start to get in the way. It's just too much work for me. I just like to work right here in front of me where it's nice and comfortable for most of the work. And then at the base of it, I also take, because I don't scrape this down here real smooth at the last, I don't know, 4 inches, because my hands aren't going to be working down there too much. But at the base of it, I go ahead and I'll go ahead and clean off any of this outer bark. I don't know why I do that for the most part. It's just something I do. I know, at least in like bow drill fires and things like that, have you ever noticed, like when you're drilling and then it wants to kind of catch on you, your spindle? A lot of times if you remove a little bit extra material a little bit higher up from where your actual base is, let's say this is my faceted base. I'll go ahead and cut this one up to it. Anyway, but then I just remove a little bit of material at the base of it here, so we're taking a little bit of barky stuff off of it. And then sometimes, just to keep it from catching in the socket, I can go up here and remove a little bit of extra material, a little bit deeper than the actual spindle is. So the drill tip is a little bit wider, so it doesn't bind in the hole. If that makes any sense to anybody? Does that make sense? I don't know.
You always make sense, Travis.
Yeah, I do.
Clear as mud.
I'm just talking to myself. Nobody else is out here. So anyway, because the deeper you get into the hole, it'll. Where's that piece I had just a second ago? Right here.
You're just talking about it binding in the socket, right?
Yeah, exactly. Because the deeper you get into the hole, then the top edges are touching, and it just. Because your spindle will be moving like this right here. The top edges will catch and it'll start binding on you. And it just
Basically, you're saying just don't leave it like at a point, kind of.
yeah.
You want it kind of be straight.
I kind of yeah, exactly. So I've got a nice piece here. This is a soft wood. The yucca is very soft. So when you drill with this piece will start to get shorter a lot faster.
You know, you might want to tell everybody the reason there's, you know, the difference between a spindle with a hand drill versus the spindle with a bow drill, because it's the complete opposite. You know, whereas a lot of people prefer a hard wood with a bow drill, well, a lot of people are under the impression that you still want to use a wood with a hand drill, and it's completely, you know,
I use pithy plants for the most part for hand drills, and it's always a softer wood, and you can use these soft woods on extremely hard woods. I mean, it could be Osage orange. I've done it on it. It doesn't matter, at least for me.
So your material basically is coming from your spindle,
from the spindle,
and not necessarily your hearthboard like it would be with a bow drill.
Exactly.
Okay.
So ideally, you'd want a real soft versus hard. You know, like probably a good hardwood, and then the softest you can get for the spindle.
Yeah, because all your material is coming from your spindle, at least. And, well, probably can kind of just show this, maybe with this piece, I don't know. Or I can start a new socket, I don't know. It's not going to drill this piece of wood a lot, because this is a harder wood for the hearth. When I start my holes, at least for me, what I do is I can just judge it off of sight now, but if you take the spindle, which is right here, and kind of basically, for me, if you mark the back side of that spindle, that would be your center hole of your actual spindle. At least for me, that's what I do. Everybody's different for it, but
Do you do that same judge when you do a bow drill flare?
I do.
And gold. And necklaces and rings and goldfish. And fish.
I'm trying to make sure that everything's away from me for the most part. That tip is dug down in it so I don't slip and cut myself. Of course, maybe some of it looks a little dangerous and might be. But, got enough of the divot there, I might be able to keep it in the socket here. When I do the hand drill, this is kind of awkward feeling now, I put my foot on it sideways like this and just kind of get comfortable. Enough that when you get going, you can bear down on the spindle. And for me, it's all about just, you know, at first just go slow. When your hands, if you want to just kind of float your hands like such, you got to remember that when your hands are going up, you're riding up on the dill. I can't hardly describe it except for to just do it, you know. You guys see? You don't want it to ride down on the spindle, because if you're just doing this, every time you go back to the top of the spindle, you've lost all that heat. And for me, the big trick is to just steadily get the board warming up. Just to start out, we're not really trying to worry about whether we're burning it in per se. But once you got that notch going, you know, you just want to warm the dill up. But we're going to go ahead and get us a notch going. You got to keep your fingers flared out. If you get too long of a spindle, it'll start whipping around like you guys just seen there, and then it'll just snap off on you. So you don't want it to be too long.
Can you show that floating of the hands again? And how you described it to me is every time you go forward, you point your fingers to the sky. Is that right?
Yeah, that's what I've been doing. Okay. That's what it feels like. Can you tell what I'm doing? And you'll get blisters if the spindle seems like your hands are starting to get hot. You can just kind of clap your hands together. That'll help get the blood flowing back to the tips of your fingers. And you can spit on your hands to get more friction against the spindle, so you can get more force if your hands are just starting to slide down the spindle like such. And that helps a lot, it really does. My notches for bow drill and for hand drill, I use my knife, and almost every knife that's slightly bushcrafty, even like a Mora, works pretty good, at least in my opinion, to give you an idea of your pie shape to take out of it. And you can just usually roll your knife over like such.
I haven't seen that tip before. That's a good tip. Let me zoom in. Show that again.
What do they do?
Show what you just did again. I've never actually seen anyone give that tip before.
Okay. For your pie shape, I just use my knife as a gauge for it. Moras work good for this, but just put the tip of your dill into the center of your divot and just roll the knife over. Make a mark, flip your knife back over, make the other mark, and then just that will be what you cut out. It works for me, at least the knives that I have. Of course, if you have any crazy super butcher knives, it's obviously not going to work like Ed. But a little saw goes a long ways for these notches, and it's not. Notches are important, but not to me. It's not as big of a deal as most people make it out to be. It can be simpler. You just don't want your notch to go all the way to the center of that hole. Kind of wish this was a harder hearth, but I think it'll work.
Why are you doing this? You're supposed to crack them.
Why are you filling your sister?
I'm going to teach Larry about hard-boiled eggs.
I don't.
Did you just make her cry, Larry?
Almost.
Were you trying?
No.
Such a jerk, Larry.
I know.
Yeah, she does that.
I figured it out last night.
Oh. You do like eggs? You just got through telling me you don't like them like this, though. You ever have them like this?
Then the bottom of it, I just kind of flued out.
I like to try.
Yeah, just so the coal has somewhere to stack up at.
You get his foot and it's gonna hurt.
Lets that air and that oxygen kind of get in there too.
Yeah.
Here, you know what? Whoa, I almost dropped. This is what I do.
What's that? Salt.
Does anybody want to see that notch there? Or pass around? That's just what I do. It's not. Everybody does it a little differently. I've even seen people do square notches.
The white part of the egg.
I like the yellow part. The bad part for you.
Tell them your favorite kind of egg.
Come over here, baby. You might.
Oh, wow.
I like the yellow stuff too.
I like the yellow stuff too.
I thought it was nutmeg.
Now what you gotta do is you gotta look real careful. Make sure
For me, I'm just heating up the board. Let the heat sink into the board. Spindle's heating up also. There's going to be a time here in a second where we're going to have to create dust and then go for a coal. Not trying to get over aggressive yet, just taking it easy. Use the whole length of the spindle.
I probably missed this while your daughter was stealing my lunch, but how hard are you pushing down on that?
Just enough. I don't know how to describe it, to be honest with you. Not like super hard, but definitely hard enough that you can tell that you're drilling.
Okay.
Each wood's a little bit different. When you got to give it pressure down, you gotta, your hands will go down the drill. Just to heat it up is all you're doing up here, you know. You can get smoke sometimes, but to actually get enough pressure.
Nice.
Oh man.
Yeah, all that dust collected up quick.
I'm too tired. Did I get it? Or?
Can't tell if it's the ember or if it's the board.
Can't tell
Kinda
either.
Looks
I can tell you.
I think
it's
there's an
still
ember.
smoking, man.
I think you got it, man.
You don't want to wear a wool sweater when you do it. No reason to rush. If you start rushing, I learned this really good from Justin, to be honest with you. Just kind of let it do its thing, because if you start rushing, then you're going to knock it all over the place. It's windy enough outside. We're kind of tucked back that it's creating its own coal. I didn't bring any bird's nest, guys.
There's that. There was some fluffy stuff.
Yeah, there you go.
Definitely want to do this part before you even start. You know what I mean? I have a bag somewhere of some of this stuff, but
I'm surprised how long that ember burns though.
yeah, you want to make sure that you have enough dust in there before you actually start to burn, to actually get the coal, to make sure that that coal is big enough.
That way it'll burn for a little while. You're not.
Yeah, so you don't have a little tiny coal to work with.
And rush.
That's part of my problem with the bow drill. Is once I start getting coal, I'm like panic mode to try to hurry up because I'm afraid it's gonna go out right away.
I mean, I would have put this thing in the bird's nest by now for sure, guys. I'm gonna try this, I think. Thanks though, I appreciate that. I put this over top of it and then flipped it over because I don't want to drop it all over the place. Oh, don't do this to me. I was just talking to you about this earlier today, you know?
Oh yeah, you don't blow as well as Justin.
Remember when I said I don't take enough time sometimes to make a nice bird nest? I think that's what I just did.
Okay, so obviously we kind of screwed up a little bit as we actually thought we had a bag down here that had some material in it, but well, we didn't. So Travis had to rush and try to put together a bird's nest, and yeah, that's what happens when you rush. But either way, that was a really good demonstration on how to actually do it, I think. So I learned a lot on that right there. So I think that will definitely help out a lot of people.
Good job, bud.
Thanks, man.
Thank
I
you.
appreciate it.
Thanks.